A very good evening, everyone. Today we are going to start our new topic, that is ecosystem, right? So before starting this ecosystem, our new topic of the day, let me know whether I'm audible or visible to you or not through this poll. Okay, great then. So let's start our today's topic, the ecosystem. The ecosystem term we have already heard before, right? Yes, in the organism and population. Ecosystem is one of the level of our ecology, right? So when we are talking about the ecosystem, every time we came to the conclusion that, or every time when we say about the ecosystem, or when we heard the ecosystem word, we always assume a picture like this given here, right? So this picture shows that it is it is a combination of both biotic and abiotic factor, right? So an ecosystem is a region in which we have the both kind of organism, right? We have both kind of component, that is living and non-living, or biotic and abiotic. So it is a community of interaction of both biotic and abiotic components. So the first question for you is, what are the two basic categories of an ecosystem? Right. Your question is, what are the two basic categories of an ecosystem? Okay, before starting this, let's give me this answer. Your options are A, aquatic and terrestrial, B, aquatic and forest, C, ponds and lakes, D, rivers and forest. So you can give your answer through this feedback, the MCQ poll, that which is which is the option containing the two basic categories of an ecosystem. Okay. So let's discuss this. As I told you, that ecosystem, or as we know, that ecosystem is the community, right? It is the community having both biotic and abiotic factors, right? It is having both the biotic and abiotic factor. So out of these, the main two areas, or maybe we can say the main two categories of the biosphere where we found both the biotic and the abiotic component is just the aquatic ecosystem and the terrestrial ecosystem. That is your lithosphere and hydrosphere. Only these are the two spheres where we find both biotic and abiotic. In atmosphere, we have only the abiotic components, right? There is no presence of biotic. If the biotic is there, they are for the limited or temporary period of time. They are not remaining there for a lifetime, or they are not there for the survival, right? So the answer for this question is A, aquatic and terrestrial. So today we are going to discuss the definition of ecosystem, the types of ecosystem, the structure and function, how it works, and the basic component which include. Apart from that, we are going to talk about the productivity, decomposition, and the energy flow within an ecosystem. Okay, so let's start with the definition of our ecosystem. As I said, it is a geographical region. It is a geographical region containing both a biotic community and an abiotic community, right? So it is a region where both biotic and abiotic communities are interrelated to each other, right? So a biotic community and its biotope together form an ecological system or ecosystem. So the biotope always provides, the biotope, that is the abiotic environment, always provides the material and energy to our biotic community. If we do not have those abiotic components, then the survival of biotic components will become very difficult. Okay, so the biotic one contains our animals, plants, microorganisms. Okay, apart from that, we have abiotic. So here we are talking about the abiotic components, right? So in our abiotic component, we have the soil, the water, the sunlight, and the air. We have 4 abiotic components, right? So now this ecosystem is divided into different categories. As I told you, there are 2 natural ecosystems. There are 2 natural ecosystems. That is terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. The terrestrial will contain all the land region, all the geographical regions such as forest, plains, that is grassland, mountains, desert, and coastal region. Whereas the aquatic ecosystem contains the both fresh water and the marine, lake, ocean, ponds, rivers, sea, estuary, everything come under this aquatic ecosystem, which are natural, which are produced by the nature itself. Apart from that, we have another type of ecosystem, which is also known as the artificial ecosystem, right? The artificial, because this ecosystem is not created by the environment or the natural sources. It is made by a person, it is made by the man. So it is also known as man-made ecosystem, such as our crop fields, right, where we are sowing the plants, okay, seeds. Then aquarium, which is also our man-made, where we only kept those species of an organism which we want to maintain. Okay. Next, we can say the whole, our complete earth is also an ecosystem, because there we have air, water, land, sunlight, everything is there. So we can call our biosphere and global ecosystem, right? We can call our biosphere and global ecosystem because the complete earth itself contains the abiotic components and the biotic components. Okay, so here we have the interaction of all these components. Now, if we are talking about the biotic components here, the main biotic component here we are taking, for example, in a forest. So in a forest, we have fauna, a good amount of fauna. We have a variety of species of plants, right? Then we are going to differentiate them. We are going to zonalize them vertically. Okay. When we are differentiating any of the species or any of the kingdom in a vertical manner, it is known as stratification. It is known as stratification. For example, you can see on the right side of the screen, there you have a picture. So you can see here different lengths or different height of plants and trees are present. So it is, we can classify or we can make the zones or layers on the basis of the height of the trees and plants found in a biosphere. Okay, the emergent layer, that is the tallest plant, then canopy layer, understory layer, shrub layer, and ground layer. Okay, so understory level we have the small plants, shrubs layer contain shrub, and the ground layer contain both the herbs and grasses. Okay, the herbs and grasses. So depending on the height of our fauna, we have different layers, different vertical differentiation of this stratified ecosystem. Okay. Next, a question for you is, what is the special pattern that occur vertically called? Here we are talking about the spatial pattern we are making for the differentiation, which we have taken vertically, that is either upward to downward or down to upward. What this pattern is called? Your options are A, zonation, B, ecosystem, C, stratification, and D, niche. So what these four, what is it known as? What is the spatial pattern that occurs vertically called? Zonation, ecosystem, stratification, or niche? Okay, so as we have just read this, that this layering and this vertical differentiation is known as stratification. We have also seen the stratification in the water region, in the aquatic habitat, in our organism and population chapter. So the answer for this question is C, that is stratification. Now moving towards the next, that is the components of ecosystem. As we have already discussed, we have two types of components, abiotic and the biotic. So abiotic component contain sunlight, wind, water, and the soil, whereas the biotic components have two categories. They can be autotrophs or they can be heterotrophs. Do anyone like to tell me what are autotrophs and what are heterotrophs? Right. The autotrophs are the organisms which are able to produce their food on their own. Right. They have the capacity to make their own food. But whereas heterotrophs are the organisms who depends on another organism for their food. So we can say the heterotrophs depend on autotrophs. Okay. So this heterotrophs further classified on the mode of their nutrition. They can be saprophyte, they can be parasite, or they can be holozoic, which we have already studied in 11th class, that saprophytes are those who survive on the dead and decaying object. Parasites, which lives on the host body to absorb the nutrients, and holozoic are those who consume another organism and obtain their food. Okay. Now moving towards our first component in detail, that is the biotic component. So our biotic, the major and the first category of biocomponent is producers, the autotrophs, who are able to synthesize their food, and the process which they use for the synthesis of food is photosynthesis, because they are using light. Okay, they are using light energy to synthesize their food, right? That is why we are calling them photosynthesis. This technique, photosynthesis, or phototrophs, right? But apart from these photoautotrophs, we have chemisynthetic organisms also, chemoautotrophs, who are also able to obtain their food, right? So these producers are also known as transducers. They are also known as transducer because they are helping in the conversion, of energy form, right? As you know, during the photosynthesis, the plants absorb the light energy and converts it into the chemical energy, right? So these organisms are also known as transducer because they are helping in the transformation of one form of the energy into the another. Okay, so the smallest or the major producers which are found in our aquatic ecosystem are the phytoplanktons and the small photosynthetic organism, which we can say the algae hai, algae is there, the small plants, aquatic plants are there. Okay, so for them we can use the example of algae and semi-submerged aquatic plants. Okay, now moving towards the next category of biotic component, those are consumers, that they are unable to make their own food, but they always depend on the another animals for obtaining the food. So they always feeding on some another organism. If as they are feeding on another organism, they are also known as the phagotrophs. Okay, they are known as the phagotrophs because they are feeding on the other organism, right? Apart from that, so we have categorized these consumers or heterotrophs basically into three different groups. What you can say, what are those three different groups? सबने पढ़ा है छोटी छोटी क्लासेस में. What are those three different classes or group? They are herbivores, carnivores, and the third one is omnivores, right? But here we are not going to discuss the omnivores. So first we have the herbivores. The herbivores are also called the first order consumer because they are directly dependent on plants. Okay, they are directly dependent on plants. Whereas if we talk about the carnivores, they are the primary carnivore because they are indirectly dependent on the plants, or we can say producers. Okay, so herbivores are those who are directly dependent on producers, whereas the carnivores are those who are dependent on the producers indirectly. Okay, the term indirectly is main over here. Okay, now these carnivores can also be classified into primary or secondary, which we will discuss later when we were discussing our food chain. Okay, now moving towards the third category, that is the decomposers or the reducers, right? The decomposers or the reducers, because they are the saprotrophs, right? These are the organisms who are surviving on the dead body of an organism. The organisms which are surviving on the body of dead bodies of an organism, or we can say the organic waste of the living organism, that is fecal matter. Okay, so these decomposers help us. These decomposers help us to give back our environment those inorganic matter which we are consuming in the form of organic matter. So they help us to recycle the minerals. Okay, these decomposers are responsible for recycling the minerals. So they usually secrete some digestive enzymes which help in the digestion of the complex organic matter, which helps in the digestion of complex organic matter. But this digestion is not taking place inside the body of an organism. This digestion is taking place externally. Okay, that means in environment. Okay. Okay, now the remaining adds raw material and minerals back. As I said, they are helping in the recycling of minerals Okay, so when we start with the taking nutrients in the form of plant. Okay, plants always take the nutrient from the soil in the form of mineral. So when a plant dies, its body degrades, and again that organic matter which it produced get back into the inorganic form, that is minerals and ions. So the conversion back of our organic matter or the raw material into the minerals is known as mineralization. Okay, so they are helping in the reduction of our oxidized products, so they are also known as reducers. So they are able to remove the degrades from the environment, and these are the micro consumers because they have the very small size, or we can also say these are the microorganism. And these कौन से microorganism involved होंगे? Which type of microorganisms are involved in this process? Can anyone tell me? Right, they can be bacteria or fungi, right? These are the decomposers which help in, or which are saprophytic also in nature, right? So here we have the three biotic factors: the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers, which are helping these three together. These three together helping in the recycling, in this recycling of inorganic material in a ecosystem. Okay. Next, your question is, who consumes the autotrophic component? Who consumes the autotrophic components? Your options are tree, plants, phytoplanktons, and heterotrophs. Out of these, who are able or who are feeding on the autotrophs? So your poll is here. You can give your answer through this poll. Okay, so you have given a correct answer, that is heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are the only ones who are directly or indirectly dependent on autotrophs. The rest, tree, plant, and phytoplanktons, they themselves are autotrophs. So autotrophs cannot eat the autotrophs. So the answer is only D, that is heterotroph. Okay. Next, we are moving towards the air salinity. These are the abiotic components. These are the abiotic factors. See, there is a difference between the component and the factor. The components are the matter or the material which is present in our ecosystem, but factors are those who are affecting our biotic components. Okay, the abiotic components are those material which are present in the ecosystem, that is sun, water, air, and land. But when we are talking about the factors, so these factors are responsible. They are responsible for, or they affect the biotic components. The biotic components of the ecosystem. Okay. For example, we can say the salinity. We have studied in a previous class that we have a wide range of organisms who can tolerate a great range of saline or salt concentration, or they are some organisms who are unable to tolerate that good or the wide range of salt concentration. Okay, there we can say in a soil we can talk about the soil texture, the components of the soil, for the temperature high and low, light intensity, the amount of intensity of light is there, water, availability of water, mineral, pH, it can either be acidic or basic, and the humidity, that is the amount of water vapor, amount of water vapor present in atmosphere. Okay, so these are the factors which are responsible or which affects the growth of the biotic component or the survival, right? Then let's take an example of an ecosystem, a small ecosystem, that is the pond, which is an aquatic type of ecosystem, because pond is the collection of water in a or it way we can say it is a water body, a shallow water body, which is resulted by the collection of water. Okay, so the main question is why we are taking pond, because we want to understand that each and every ecosystem is self-sustainable. Each and every ecosystem is self-sustainable. How they are sustainable, let us discuss. For example, in a pond, initially when the water get accumulated in a pond or a pit, then there is a production of phytoplanktons. The phytoplanktons were formed. Okay, or we can say algae will be produced. This algae can be consumed. This algae can be consumed by the zooplanktons, right? They can be consumed by the zooplanktons. Then these zooplanktons eaten by the small larvae. Okay, the small larva. The larva can be eaten by the frog. Okay, or we can say the fishes, if there are fishes present and the size of the pond is large, these fishes can be eaten by the birds. Okay, or the cell or big fishes we can say. Okay, and when these fishes die, they are consumed or they are degraded by the microorganism, right? So as you can see, each and every, from where we have started the cycle, we started the cycle with the phytoplankton, and again we have ended with the mineral. The phytoplankton started with the consumption of inorganic matter, right? Which get deposited till here. The inorganic matter get converted to organic by the phytoplanktons or algae, and that moves till here, and that organic matter which is present here is reverted back to again the inorganic component by the microorganism. So from where we have started, we reached there only. So this is the complete cycle of recycling of mineral and ions or inorganic component. We can say our ecosystem is self-sustainable. Okay, so there are several components which are present in a pond. The first is abiotic. So in abiotic component, we have water and soil. Then we have the climatic conditions. Obviously, climatic conditions are required. The presence of sunlight, cycle of temperature and day length. Everything is affecting the growth of the biotic component present there. So in biotic component, we have the autotrophic component. They can be phytoplanktons, algae, or the submergent marginal plants. Then we have the consumers, that is heterotrophs. They can be zooplanktons or free living or de-dwelling forms of an organism. Then the last we have the decomposer, that is fungi, bacteria, or some flagellates. Okay, so you can see through this complete food chain that this ecosystem is self-reliable. Okay, it is self-sustainable. Now, your next question is, which of the following is an abiotic component which is found in the pond? Yes, the abiotic component. Here we are talking about the abiotic components. Okay. Your options are A, bacteria, B, fungi, C, water, and D, fishes. You can give your answer through this poll, that which of the following is belong to the category of abiotic component present in a pond. The abiotics are those who are non-living, who does not have the chances of survival, who does not survive, right? They are the complete inorganic, non-living matter. So out of these, okay, great, good for your answer. As you can see, the bacteria present here is a biotic component. It is a surviving organism. Fungi, again, fishes are also living organism, but a non-living component which is present here is only water. So water is the correct answer. Okay. Now we are moving towards the basic components of the ecosystem. The basic components are productivity. That means here we are going to produce something. But whenever we produce something, we also have to spend them. Okay, so here what we are producing? The producing energy, the conserved form of energy. So we have to utilize it in the through this energy flow. Then the decomposition and the nutrient cycle. These are the 4 components which we are going to discuss in this chapter, right? So let's talk about the productivity. So productivity is the sum total. It is the sum total of product formed by the biomass. Okay, it is given, it is a product formed by the biomass, and its exact amount is given through its dry weight only. Okay, if you want to get the exact amount of this productivity, you have to measure the dry weight. So the main form or the main source of energy in our ecosystem, which is sustaining it, is the solar energy. It is the solar energy, that is energy coming from the sun. Okay, the sunlight. Sunlight gives us the solar energy. Okay, then the amount of biomass, that is organic matter, produced per unit area over the time by the plants. By whom? By the plant, is known as primary production, and it can be expressed by the 2 different units. It can be weight, that is per gram, or by energy in the form of energy, that is kilocalorie per meter square. So the rate of biomass production is known as productivity. This is the very important statement, that the rate through which the rate of that biomass production is our productivity, and it can be explained in the form of gram per square per year, or kilocalorie per meter square per year. Okay, and it is divided into 3 different components, that is GPP, NPP, and R, that is the respiration loss. For example, I have taken the 1000 joule of energy, right? Through the sun, this tree, this plant has taken 1000 joule. Okay, for the conversion, for the photosynthesis. But when the product they form, they are providing only 800 joule to the next level. So they have acquired 1000 joule. That is your gross primary productivity. It is the rate of production of organic matter during photosynthesis. That is 1000 joule. But the availability, now the amount that is providing us is just what? 800 joule. So this 800 joule is our net primary प्रोडक्टिविटी. मान लो आपने 1000 रुपीज लिए, ठीक है, 1000 रुपीज लिए कि भैया मेरे को खाना चाहिए, आप ले लो 1000. आप या फिर मैं कह सकती हूँ आई हैव गिवन 1000 जूल ऑफ एनर्जी टू यू टू मेक फूड फॉर मी. Okay, but when you serve the food, you have served the food with only 800 joule, because while preparing the food you have lost some energy also. So that lost energy, here we have the 1000 and we have got the 800. That means we have lost 200 joules of energy here. So this 800 joule of energy is respiration losses. Okay, that is respiration losses. Okay, which is provided by the producer to the consumers. Next is the secondary productivity. It is the rate of formation of organic matter. Now the 800 joule which is presented to the next level consumer, which is presented by the producer to the consumer, is our secondary productivity. Okay, and the primary productivity differs or from the ecosystem in various method. Okay, in very variable ways, and it depends on some factor. First, it depends on the plant species, that is the efficiency. The efficiency of the plant matters here, how efficiently they are working to produce the component. The environmental factor, that is the temperature, sunlight, okay, these are the presence of water. These are the components which are acting as the factor which depends the efficiency of working of an producer. Then we have the availability of nutrient, that is the amount of minerals which is present in soil. Okay, then we have the photosynthetic capacity of the plant. That means how much photosynthesis, how much amount of photosynthesis a plant can do in a particular period of time. For example, say I have given a work to you that you have to write the 10 pages per hour. You have to write the 10 pages per hour. Okay, so this work is given to the 3 different students, student A, B, and C. Okay, I have given the work to 3 students, that is A, B, and C, to write 10 pages, per hour. After 1 hour, what I have seen, the A has written only 3 pages. B has written the 6 pages, but the C has written 8 pages. So I have given the 10-page work. The maximum pages was written by the C. That means the working efficiency of C is more than the B. Okay? And the working efficiency of B is more than the A. So whenever we have a work or a written work, so I will always go for the C people for doing my written work, right? No, because the C people has the very fast writing speed, so that it can complete the work in a minimum period of time. Okay, so this working efficiency is clear to everyone. Now it was found that out of our both aquatic and terrestrial biome or ecosystem, we already produce the 170 billion tons of organic matter, out of which only 55 billion ton product is coming from the ocean. This 55 billion ton organic matter is just coming from the ocean. So we can say the productivity of the terrestrial ecosystem. The terrestrial ecosystem is way more than the aquatic ecosystem. Okay. So your next question is, what is the rate of biome production called? What is the rate of biome production called? Your options are A, productivity, B, decomposition, C, photosynthesis, and D, respiration. You can give your answer through this poll, that what is the rate of biome production is known as A, productivity, B, decomposition, C, photosynthesis, and D, respiration. Okay, great. So, as per your answer, you have given a 100% correct answer. That is A, productivity, which we have just discussed. So, our next topic is the decomposition. That is the breaking down. That is the breaking down of complex organic matter into simpler inorganic matter. Okay, so decomposition is a process of breaking down of complex organic matter into the simpler inorganic matter. So it is a breakdown, as I have told you, of complex organic matter by decomposer into the simpler inorganic matter, which are the carbon dioxide, water, and the nutrients. The simplest form of inorganic matter which is present in our environment is only the carbon dioxide, water, and the nutrients. And this whole process of decomposition is oxygen requiring. A high demand of oxygen is there. That is, it is aerobic process. Okay, and for this decomposition, the raw material which is present is known as detritus. The raw material which is present for the decomposition is known as the detritus. That can be the remain of any living organism, or it can be a fecal matter of any living organism. Okay, so this detritus is nothing, just a remain or a fecal matter. Okay, so your question is, what are the complex organic remains such as the dead animal remains, dead plant remains, and fecal matter called? Your options are A, humus, B, mucus, C, excreta, and D, detritus. What will you call the remains and the dead remains or the fecal matter of an living organism are known as the complex organic remain, either in the form of remnants, the dead part, or a fecal matter. They are known as, right, you have given a correct answer. They are known as the detritus, which is the raw material for the decomposers also. Okay. Now this decomposition process takes place in 5 different steps: fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification, and mineralization. There are first 5 steps involved in the decomposition, but there is no specific sequence of this decomposition because all these 5 steps takes place simultaneously. All these 5 steps of decompositions are taking place simultaneously. Okay. So the first step, that is fragmentation. It is the breakdown of the large particles into the smaller particles. The breakdown of the larger particles into the smaller particles by the detritivores, for example, earthworm. Earthworm is not only breaking down the larger particles into the smaller, apart from that, it is also causing the loosening of soil, which provide the aeration. Okay, which provide the aeration, that is a good mixing of air in the soil. Okay, the next step is catabolism. Now this simpler inorganic material or this degraded detritus has to be further broken down into the inorganic substance. So that was done by the help of bacteria and fungal enzyme that comes under catabolism, right? Now this inorganic material is released into the soil in the form of humus by the microbes, which the process is known as mineralization. And while mineralization, when this inorganic material is released inside the soil, these inorganic materials are soluble in nature. They are water soluble. So when they get solubilized with water, they get precipitated. When they get solubilized in water, they get precipitated in the form of unavailable salt. And where they are present in the soil. And the last thing is humidification, which is the accumulation of these dark amorphous substance. Dark amorphous substance. Amorphous, that means no further breaking. No further breaking of the components is taking place here. Okay, is known as the humidification. Okay, is everything clear to everyone? So now we are moving towards the pictorial representation of this. This is the old tree whose leaf get released or withering of leaf has taken place. Okay, now this leaf is eaten by some organism. Now this leaf is eaten by some organism, for we can say caterpillar, okay, or some earthworm. Okay, now this matter is decomposed. Now this matter is decomposed by the decomposers or the microorganism and leads to the formation of what? The inorganic matter, and they get accumulated in the soil. Now the soil is rich with this minerals and ions, and now this mineral and iron again taken up by the land. Okay, so we have started with the inorganic matter and again we have reached to the organic matter. So the question for you here is, what is the process of secretion of digestive enzymes by the decomposer to convert insoluble complex organic molecule? Decomposition of what? The insoluble complex organic molecule into the simple soluble organic and inorganic matter is known as. Your options are A, fragmentation, B, decomposition, C, humidification, and D, catabolism. You can give your answer through this poll. That process of secretion of digestive enzyme by decomposers to convert the insoluble organic matter into the soluble inorganic molecule is known as A, fragmentation, B, decomposition, C, humidification, or D, catabolism. Give your answer fast. Okay, great. So you have given a correct answer that this process is known as the catabolism. This process is known as catabolism because the enzymes here, the enzymes are involved, and wherever the enzyme is involved, it is known as metabolic process. And out of these four, the metabolic process is catabolism. Okay. Now we are moving towards the factors which are influencing this decomposition. First is the chemical composition. That means which kind of macromolecule is forming our decompose or detritus. Okay. Then if it is made with the nitrogen and some water soluble substance such as sugar, then the decomposition takes place very quickly. But if it is made up of some a complex protein substance such as lignin and chitin, the degradation will remain slow. Okay, same with the climatic factor. The warm and moist environment favors the decomposition because it also favors the growth. It also favors the growth of microorganism. Okay, it favors the growth of microorganism, and if the number or the growth of microorganism take place at a larger scale, then they will perform their work at a maximum rate. But if we decrease the temperature and produces the anaerobic condition, it will definitely inhibit the decomposition because the decomposition is an aerobic process. It is an aerobic process which we have discussed earlier also. Okay, so presence of air, that is oxygen, is very necessary for the decomposition process. Okay, now we are moving towards the energy flow. For understanding this energy flow, we have to know that the sun is the only source of energy. The sun is the only source of energy. If the sun emits 100% radiation, if the sun emits 100% radiation, then only 50% radiation reaches to the earth. Okay, and this 50% radiation which is reaching to us is known as PAR, that is photosynthetically active radiation. And out of this 50% radiation, only 2 to 10% of the radiation are utilized by the plant capture only 2 to 10% of this radiation, okay, to convert or to make the food. And they are also following the rule of the second law of thermodynamics, that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It get converted from one form to another, from one form to another. Okay, so this can also be observed through this food chain. This food chain shows the transfer of energy. For example, our plant is having 100% energy. Okay, only the 10% energy will go to the grasshopper because grasshopper is our primary consumer. Okay, and the primary consumers are the herbivores because they are directly dependent on the plants, that is the producers. Okay, now the 10% of this 10%, that is 1% energy, is transferred to our secondary consumer. Now this secondary consumer is the primary carnivore. The secondary consumer is also known as the primary carnivore. Okay. Now it is consumed by this raccoon, which is containing the next 10% of the energy taken up by the rat. Okay, that is our tertiary consumer. And that was taken, the next 10%, that is 0.01%, is taken by this eagle, and The 0.001% is only moved to our decomposition. So as the level of our food chain increases, right? As the level of our food chain increases, the energy flow from one step to another level, or we can say from one level to another level, always decreases. Okay, so food chains are always linear. They are always simple and linear. Okay, and it contains two types of food chain: the grazing chain, in which the organic matter get accumulated into the organic one. The inorganic matter get accumulated into the organic one. And the second is decomposer cycle. That is the detritus cycle, which we can say the decomposer food chain, in which the organic matter, the complex organic matter, is further transferred into the inorganic substance by the help of decomposers. Okay, so a complete cycle has taken place, and this complete cycle has taken place by the help of two food chains: the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. Okay, so there are some ecological principles which we have right from the food chain. The first, it says that the food chains are complete and self-contained, as we have already discussed. जहां से photosynthesis शुरू हुई, वहीं पे end कहाँ पे हुआ? Decomposition. The food cycle has to be short for the more efficiency. Okay, जितनी लंबी cycle होगी, as much as long the cycle, the more energy loss has taken place for the next level. Okay, the size of the population is determined by the number of trophic level. Okay, as we move upwards in the level or the food chain from the producer to the primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers, the number of the organisms start decreases. The levels increases, but the number of organism decreases. Okay, the number of organism decreases. Okay, but along with that, the size of the organism always increases. So we can say the level is directly proportional to the size of an organism, but it is indirectly proportional to the number of organisms. Okay, the levels of the food chain is directly proportional to the size, but it is indirectly proportional to the number of organisms. Okay, so an organism cannot be assigned to just one trophic level. इस point को समझते हैं by the help of the food web. Okay, we can assume here, see, this is the producer, this is the primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. If we go for this food chain, we can see this raccoon has the tertiary consumer. But when we go from this food chain, when we go through this food chain, the plant is the producer, the grasshopper is the primary consumer, whereas the raccoon becomes the secondary consumer. So here you can see, when the food chains are interlinked to one another, the trophic level cannot be defined to a particular organism. If the food chain was long, it can be the higher trophic level given to the organism, but if the food chain is the small, it can be given a smaller level. Okay, so again we have some characteristics. The first says, unlike food chain, food webs can never be straight, and the food webs are always interlinking of food chains. A food web contains so many food chains coming together. They are interconnected. They are always providing the alternate pathways of food availability. As we can say, if the rats are not available for the raccoon can consume the grasshopper. So through this, it has a variety of food available, or it can eat some fish, it can eat the prawn. So there are various for our consumer. Then there are greater alternative pathway to stabilizing the ecosystem. By stabilizing, to check, by checking the number of offspring of a species. Okay, by checking the number of offspring, or we can say individuals of a species. This is what given in our next point. Food webs also helps in checking the overpopulation of high fecundative species of organisms. They can be animal or they can be plant. And now through this, the food web always help in development of our ecosystem. So these are some points which are given, and this is our 10% law, that as the trophic level increases, the energy efficiency decreases. As the increase in trophic level, okay, the energy efficiency decreases by the 90%. Only 10% moves further. Okay. So here is your question. What are the only sources of energy for all ecosystem on Earth? What is the major energy source or the only energy source for the ecosystem of the Earth? Your options are A, water, B, sun, C, plant, and D, animal. You can give your response through this poll. So the poll is available to you now. Okay, you can give your feedback. You can answer that. You can feed your answer in this poll, that in which is the option correct for the only source, to be only source of the energy to our Earth. Okay, great. Everyone has given a correct answer. That is sun. Sun is the only source which is available as a food source. Okay, so today we are completing here. So your homework for today is you have to read the NCERT line by line, and you have to practice the module question along with giving some 2 to 3 new examples of a food chain comprising a food web. Okay, so this is all for today. Before leaving the class, please give your feedback through this NPS poll, and after giving your precious feedback, you can leave the meeting. Okay, thank you so much for your precious feedback. We'll meet tomorrow again with the new topics of this ecosystem. Okay.